Hey folks, welcome back. Time for some more alternative role-playing games. So, sitting in front of me here, we have the box set for Numenera. This is from Monte Cook Games. It's a big, lovely slipcase set with two massive books inside. I think they're both 416 pages. Now, Numenera has been out for a while. This is kind of it's not a new edition, it's just sort of an update. So the original release was just one book, the core rule book, which was 416 pages. And since then, they've clarified some stuff. They've added lots of new tidbits here and there for character building, and sort of agglomerated some stuff that was in supplements, I believe, and put it into this Destiny book here. So when you buy the box set, you get an awful lot of content in here. You get, I think, all the core rules basically are in Discovery, and then you have a lot more expanded stuff in Destiny. There's also some stuff in here beyond that. I don't know exactly what. It wasn't very clear when I ordered it what those things would be. You can kind of see a hint there. It looks like some character sheets and stuff. Here we go. So we'll look at the blurb first of all. They say there have been 8 worlds before ours. 8 times the people of Earth over vast millennia built their civilizations. They reached heights we cannot even imagine now. They spoke to the stars, reshaped the creatures of the world, and mastered form and essence. They built cities and machines that have since fallen to ruin, leaving only their vast outlines and barest remnants. This is the 9th world. The people of the prior worlds are gone, scattered, disappeared, or transcended. But their works remain, in the places and devices that still contain a spark of their former function. The uninformed call these magic, but the wise know that they are our legacy. They are our future. They are the Numenera. So it's written by Monte Cook, Bruce Cordell, and Sean K. Reynolds. So in the slipcase set, of course, we have the 416-page Numenera Discovery book with game rules, character generation, bestiary, hundreds of items, and 3 adventures. The Destiny core book has new and exhilarating modes of play, letting players create and expand their world over the course of entire campaigns. Also has additional character options, vehicles, artifacts, and structures, and 4 more adventures. Wow, so 7 adventures in total. That's pretty good. And 2 giant poster maps. Oh, cool. Additional handouts and game aids. A beautiful Order of Truth medallion, all in an attractive and sturdy keepsake slipcase. It's hard to say that. That is the Order of Truth medallion, by the way, kind of embedded into the edge of the slipcase there. So, without further ado, let's crack this bad boy open. I'm very excited about this. I wanted to get this game back when it was originally kickstarted, but I wasn't really having a lot of RPG playing opportunities at the time, so I went for board games instead. Now the situation has reversed. I'm getting rid of all my, well, not all of my, but many of my board games and replacing them with RPGs, which take up less space, and I have pretty cool groups of people to play them with now. So I've gone ahead and bought this game to sort of get into the system a little bit. Now the Numenera system was where the Cypher system originated. Now that's kind of a generic version of the core system in Numenera, which can be applied to any genre of games, and they've released, I think, 5 genre source books, which are all about 220 pages or so. You know, there's one for horror, there's one for sci-fi, there's one for fairy tales, all kinds of cool stuff. And I really wanted to get into Cypher, primarily because I'd like to do a campaign in the coming year which is based on one relatively crunchy system on alternating weeks. And then in the weeks in between, I want to do lots of one-shots and cool, wacky stuff. And the Cypher system is pretty elegant and simple, so I'd be able to apply it to, you know, a whole range of different types of games and one-shots and etc. And it wouldn't be much for the players to have to learn. So that's kind of my motivation here. And I thought might as well start with the original Numenera. Alright, so a bunch of stuff has fallen out. We've got a bookmark. Quite nice. We've got the Order of Truth medallion shape there. Some city landscapes. Some giant mysterious things. Oh, and it's got handy references for key rules. That's nice. So the artifact list, cipher list. Ciphers, by the way, from which the Cypher system gets its name, are a key part of the system for Numenera and for the Strange and other games in this category from Monte Cook. Basically, a cipher is kind of a highly specialized one-use item, which can give you some kind of special power, and they're often very unusual powers. And the idea is that you get ciphers all the time. You pick them up from, looting places, from, killing bad guys or whatever, exploring around, and you're supposed to use them and drop them, and use them and drop them. And they really add this kind of sense of discovery and exploration to the game. And they're a really key part of the game mechanics. I think that's one thing that people have a little bit of trouble with when they're kind of getting into Numenera or the other Cypher system games, is that, the ciphers seem like this weird kind of add-on, but they actually fit pretty well in a lot of genres, and they do give players an impetus to go out and explore, to just try things and experiment, and they can give you lots of cool powers as kind of a one-off, so they can be pretty wacky and cool, and you don't have to worry about kind of rebalancing the whole game, because it's just you'll get a couple of uses out of it at most, and then you'll move on with your lives. So I like it, particularly for a game like Numenera, which is all about exploring the wreckage of these past civilizations, and all this sort of mysterious technology that everybody has forgotten how it works in a kind of Warhammer 40k sort of way. So what do we got here? This is a character creation walkthrough. That's useful. Very cool character sheets, by the way, for this game. I really like that design. So a cool thing about characters in the Cypher system and in Numenera as well is you have the kind of character sentence that describes who you are. So there's an example here where your sentence has a descriptor, a type, and a focus. So then you come up with a sentence that's like, I am a graceful glaive who bears a halo of fire. So your descriptor there is graceful, your type, which is sort of like a class, is glaive, and your focus is bearing a halo of fire. And each of those aspects gives your character special abilities and different things that they can do. And there's just a huge number of possible combinations of those three things. And when you pick up other games in the Cypher system sort of ecology, you get loads more options for descriptors, types, and focuses, or foci, I guess, is the plural of that. So, you have a huge amount of character options, and the system itself is very kind of simplified compared to something like D&D 5e even. But within that, you have a remarkable amount of player choice, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll look a bit more at the rules later, but that's a nice handy reference guide. Then we have a GM quick reference card. So what happens on certain roll results, how to apply effort to reduce task difficulty in general. So how you would describe the task at a given difficulty and the associated target number, and some guidance for the GM, the effective armor, weapon damage, and distances. So that's important for combat. Combat is very much kind of fast and loose in Numenera in the Cypher system. You do lots of cool stuff in combat, but it's not, you're not sort of beset with tons of tactical options like you would be on a, D&D 3.5 or something like that. All right, so now we're just going to flick through a little bit. I'm not going to spend forever, hopefully. But I do really want to show these books off, because if there's one thing I know about Monte Cook Games is that their books are really, really nicely laid out. Loads of great artwork as well. So here we have Discovery. So this is kind of the main sort of core rule book. You can see it's got lovely, colorful, vibrant art, loads of weird-looking people with cool kind of augmetics and cybernetics. Somebody's riding a giant fish. This guy's on a jet ski. There's all kinds of stuff going on. On the back, so we've got complete streamlined rules for fast-paced, story-based tabletop role-playing game experience. Concept-driven character generation, detailed information on the Ninth World, including a giant poster map, bestiary of 50 creatures and characters, hundreds of Numenera items, and 3 adventures. Cool. So, there we go. That's a map of the Numenera world, so you can see. So there's plenty of towns and villages to be stopping by and exploring, with loads of empty space to get into and find ruins and find ciphers and artifacts and cool stuff. So let's see, we've got some lore here at the beginning. Looks like, a little bit of an introduction to the vibe of Numenera. Welcome to the Ninth World, so a bit more background. Now, how to play. So the basic idea of Numenera and the Cypher system is really simple, but it's kind of backwards from the way you do task resolution in something like D&D. So whereas in D&D, like you roll a d20 and you add a modifier and you try to beat some target number. So you might have a plus 11 to your roll, and you want to hit the monster by getting, 31 plus, right? So you roll a die, and if you get, 10 or more, then you're going to hit. With Numenera, it's kind of the opposite way around, where the GM assigns a difficulty, which is from 1 to 10, as you can see. You multiply that by 3 to get a target number, and that's what you need to roll on a d20. Now, of course, you'll quickly notice that anything over difficulty 6 then becomes impossible to roll on a d20, because 7 you need a 21, right? And that's where your character abilities come in. You have skills, you have edges, you have assets that you can apply to the situation to ease the difficulty, right, and reduce that down. So let's say I have a difficulty 6 task, which is intimidating, and I need to roll 18, 19, or 20 to succeed, but I can apply my modifiers to the difficulty from, let's say I have an asset like a weapon that targets a weakness of this enemy I'm trying to hit. That might ease the difficulty by 1. And let's say I have, the high ground in the environment. Maybe that eases by another 1, and things like that. So you basically apply your modifiers to the difficulty before you roll. So the end result is you're always rolling an unmodified d20 against that modified difficulty. So it's kind of the opposite way around from D&D, if that makes sense. But it's really quick and easy to get into. Basically, as a GM, you can come up with basically anything that your players want to do. Just come up with a difficulty from 1 to 10 that makes sense in context and have them roll it. And then they come up with skills and stuff that they can use to try and ease the difficulty if possible. And off you go. So it's really straightforward to, sort of adjudicate all kinds of different actions in the game, which is really nice. And that's why I wanted to look at the Cypher system as my kind of one-shot, sort of bi-weekly game between doing my sort of more crunchy game the other weeks, which is probably going to be Call of Cthulhu, but I'm not 100% decided yet. See what my players would like to do. So then we get into character creation. The other thing about Cypher that is kind of weird to D&D players is that you only have 3 stats, might, speed, and intellect, and they're not kind of static. They're actually pools of points. And as you go through your kind of adventuring day, you'll spend those points to do various things. And if you take damage, you'll take damage to those pools as well. And if you lose out, damage starts on your might pool, for example. If you lose all your might points, then you go down 1 on this condition track. So that affects your future rolls and stuff. You're beaten up a little bit. And then you start taking damage to speed and then to intellect and all that. So basically, your stats are kind of like your hit points and your resources in a way. So you got to get used to that. And similarly, experience points in this game are also a resource. Basically, you can use them for various different tasks within the game, as well as advancing your character. So another thing to get used to is that you don't need to hoard your XP all the time. Oftentimes, it's worth it to spend them in the moment, because you can acquire them pretty frequently from just playing. So there's some explanations of the main character types. So in the main game, you have glaives, which are kind of fighters, if you like. They're good with combat mainly. Then you have, instead of levels in Numenera, you have tiers, different tiers of play. I think there's 6 at the maximum when you count it goes up to 6th here. So at each tier you gain some abilities, you gain some new fighting moves and stuff, which is cool. There's a lot of character progression, even though you don't have as many kind of gradated levels as you do in D&D or something like that. There's definitely a sense of progression going on. Nanos are kind of like your wizards or your psychics. They can use psionics and forbidden arcane knowledge and stuff, and they are very useful for that. They can sort of affect the narrative as if they were a spellcaster in a fantasy game. And there's lots of different varieties of nanos, just like there are with glaives. Then you have the jack. So the jack is a kind of jack of all trades. They're kind of in between. They're not super specialized in one or the other. But they are intrepid explorers, it says. Jacks don't use one skill or tactic exclusively. They use whatever weapons, armor, esoteries, or anything else might help them. They are hunters, particularly treasure hunters, con artists, scalds, rogues, scouts, and experts in a variety of fields. So the face of your party, if you like, will probably be a jack, because they'll be more into the roguish, skill-based side of things. Lots of details on those guys. going all the way up through the 6 tiers. And then we get into the descriptors, which is what I was speaking about before in your kind of character sentence. So your descriptors include things like charming, clever, graceful, intelligent, mystical, stealthy, strong, tough, all that kind of stuff. And those all have impacts on how your character functions. So if you're graceful, you're agile and get +2 to your speed pool. You're trained in all tasks involving balance and careful movement. That means you can ease difficulties on tasks relating to those kinds of special movement. You're also trained in tasks involving physical performing arts and speed defense tasks. So you can see just that descriptor really kind of changes the way your character is going to play quite a bit. So your character concept is really closely tied to these 3 things, the descriptor, the type, and the focus. So we go through the different character descriptors, and now we have the foci. So these are kind of what give you special abilities and cool stuff to do. So things like employing magnetism, exploring dark places, controlling beasts, gravity, talking to machines, and working miracles, that kind of stuff. And of course, as you advance through tiers 1 to 6, your abilities get more powerful as well. And there's probably loads of pages on the foci. Looks to be the case. Oh, now we're into equipment. Yeah, there we go. Character, focus, equipment. Right, so I don't know much about equipment in this game yet. I know about Cyphers. I know that you can wear various types of armor. They have impact on your speed. There are many different types of weapons. And weapons do kind of a set amount of damage, as you can see. So light weapons do 2 points of damage, medium weapons 4, heavy weapons 6. And there you go. But they do have different characteristics as well to differentiate them further, just beyond the sort of light, medium, heavy axis. Then, of course, you have special equipment, glow globes, shock rings, float stones. These are all things you can be using out in the field on your adventures. Then we have the rules with a nice summary of the key concepts. So difficulty is your 1 to 10 that you multiply by 3 to get your target number. Easing is what I was talking about before, where you can decrease a task difficulty by a step if you have something that benefits you on that task. If you spend points from one of your stat pools, you can further reduce the difficulty of the task, make your attacks do more damage, or improve your character abilities and their effects. Hindering is the opposite of easing, so things can happen to you like an enemy ability or some kind of encumbrance in the environment that makes your task more difficult, and that will increase your difficulty, so that's hindering. Similarly, if you're trained in a skill, that will help you in related tasks. If you are not trained, you have an inability, and you are hindered by one step when you try to do that task. So that makes your life more difficult. Then it explains things like what your stats and tasks and turns are all about. Then we get into determining task difficulty, what to do before you roll the die, which we kind of spoke about a little bit. Another interesting part of the game and the Cypher system in general is the GM intrusion. But basically, the GM can kind of jump into the narrative and intrude and create something that happens that can make life more difficult for you, basically. But the flip side of that is that you can get XP out of it, essentially. That's my understanding, anyway. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. So yeah, there's initial costs. That's, let's say a character wants to use a might action to open a heavy iron door. The GM says that forcing the door open is difficulty 5, and there's an initial cost of 3 might points simply to try. Okay. Okay, so that's about retrying tasks after you've already failed. Then we've got distance, timekeeping, encounters, taking actions, various terrible things that can happen to you, falling, fire, major fire, acid splash, cold, shock, electrocution, etc. Not very nice stuff. How to use cover, healing up the damage track if you get conditions inflicted on you, how to deal with moving targets, area effects, gravity changes, attacking objects, movement modifiers depending on terrain. So you can see there's a decent amount of crunch here. I mean, the system is really, really simple at the core, but they've added a lot of nuance to it. So there is interesting things to do on a turn. And I've spent a lot of time kind of researching this system Because my initial concern was like, well, only 3 stats? You know, there's like, everything's so simplistic. I don't really understand what you can get out of this. But the nuances of the system, the Cypher element, the spending and receiving of XP, the use of your various pools of your 3 stats, you know, plus your abilities from your foci and your descriptors and so on. I mean, there's really a ton of character building options, but they just don't take up that much cognitive space, you know, because the rules underlying them are all based on the same kind of unified mechanic, and nothing is really deviating too far from that or adding loads of cognitive load onto the player, which I think is great. So now we have tons of information about the ninth world, which, as we read on the back of the slipcase, is the kind of where we are now after 8 ages of various civilizations rising and falling. And yeah, so there's cool places to visit. Then we have the Beyond. So this is the any area of the world that isn't part of the 9 kingdoms of the Steadfast. Okay, people of the Beyond are even more disparate and isolated from one another than the folk of the Steadfast are. So that we're getting out into the wilds a little bit when we go into the Beyond. I mean, one thing I love about these books, by the way, is that you have all these little notes and citations on the margins here. So, you know, it talks about Mount Zanus, and then there's a legend here about that you could work into your description as a GM. And then, you know, when it mentions the wandering walk that pilgrims do, there's a reference to, you know, core rulebook page where you can find more info. It's really great. It just makes the whole thing really usable. Plus, you know, there's plenty of artwork. I mean, almost every page has artwork on it. It's all of really high standard. You've got loads of maps in this section to give you a sense of place. The cartography is really nice. It looks modern. I mean, they're just really great looking books, you know, and I'm really, really thrilled with these in terms of the quality. Yeah, so Beyond the Beyond. Okay, so going even further. Then we have information about various in-game organizations. So that'll be things like the Order of Truth, the Jagged Dream, the Red Fleets, the Saracenians. Don't know anything about these. Lots of interesting stuff to read. Then we've got creatures, things to fight. Look at that guy. Looks unpleasant. Like a nightmarish, even more nightmarish version of a sandworm. So the interesting thing about creatures in this game is that they function on the same basis as everything else. So creatures are basically defined by one number. So the Abacos here is level 4, which means it generally has a target number of 12 when you're trying to do something to it. But what makes them interesting and exciting is that you've got all this flavor text here about their motivations, how they behave. They've got motives. So this guy hungers for transdimensional energy. They can be found virtually anywhere. They start with 12 health. They inflict 4 damage, and they can move a short range per turn. But they defend as level 5 or as level 7, depending. So and then in the combat section, you've got all this stuff they can do. They use metallic claws. They can choose to be insubstantial, solid, or partially solid. And those have various different effects on the combat. They can also touch an object that uses transdimensional energies. And instead of taking damage, the object is drained of power and becomes useless, and the Abacos gains +5 health. So there's tons of interesting stuff the Abacos can do, but you only really need to remember one number when you're dealing with it, which I think is pretty amazing, actually. And that means if you want to create a crazy new monster, come up with a concept for what it does, you know, some straightforward mechanics for that, and then give it a number, give it a level. That's it. And there are also 3 Ninth World Bestiary books that I really want to get at some point. They're filled with really creative stuff. Plus there's bestiaries for the other games in the line, like the Strange, Predation, all that kind of stuff. So it's all intercompatible. You know, I can grab creatures from the Strange and put them in Numenera or vice versa. But you can see they're really pretty cool looking creatures, very unique in their style. The artwork is great as usual. And they're all kind of different level ranges as well. You know, we've got level 5 here, which would be tougher beginner characters. Level 3 would be more straightforward to face. Quite a few options here for things to fight. And the Ravage Bear. Wow, that looks terrifying. Sarax. Seski. Gross. Some kind of giant spider mammoth thing. More spiders. Steel spider, in fact. Here we got a big guy, Travanis. Ooh, level 6. A writhing mass of tendrils 5 meters across and 4 meters high. A creature from another world that hunts for cellular material to consume. Lovely. Don't want to mess with him. Then we got a section of NPCs. So these are sort of generic NPCs from different factions with different capabilities that you can drop into your game at will, which is cool. And then we get into the Numenera, which is all the ciphers and items that you can find scattered about. Then there's a table here to roll on for dangers that can come at you from picking up ciphers, I guess. There's how you find and identify them. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So we'll pick out something at random. Density nodule. So level will be 1d6. Usable. It's a crystal nodule affixed to a melee weapon. For the next 28 hours, each time the weapon nodule is attached to strikes a solid creature or object, the weapon suddenly increases dramatically in weight, causing the blow to inflict an additional 2 points of damage. 3 points if the cipher is level 4 or higher. Cool. You have an attractor. So you can wear it on a glove, level 1d6 plus 4, and one unanchored item your size or smaller within long range is drawn immediately into the device, or to the device. This takes 1 round. So you can kind of suck enemy items towards you. That's pretty cool. And again, all these things are designed to be kind of used and abused and tossed pretty quickly. So they give you loads and loads of stuff to work with here. And in the other books, in the Numenera line, there's always new ciphers and stuff that you can give to your players and give them cool stuff to look at. There's also various potions. There's ray emitters, subdual field, shock nodules, tracers, water breathers. Come on, focus. There we go. Artifacts. So these are tech devices left over from civilizations of the past. They're devices of a more permanent nature with more straightforward applications. So these are things like weapons and armor and stuff that you would use for a while. So artifacts are more difficult to get your hands on, but they will stick around much more so than the Numenera. And you can see stuff, there's shields, battle armor, bounding boots, which negate gravity to make jumping and running easier, cellular disruptors, chameleon cloaks. They have a depletion rating here, so I guess if you roll that number, say 1d20 in this case, then the item will run out of juice, and you'll have to find a way to replenish it or chuck it, I guess. But yeah, I don't know much about artifacts yet. Having just got the game, I just know that they are more substantial in terms of their longevity in the game than Numenera. Then you have oddities and discoveries, which are things that are interesting but have no real game value. They're just kind of cool stuff to just add some flavor. So you can roll on this D100 table and get some examples. So like a plastic bottle containing a spray that cleans any stain and never runs out. Useful. Fuzzy stuffed ravage bear that makes growling noises when you squeeze it. So these are just things to kind of, some odd relic of a previous age that doesn't really do anything useful, but it gives some flavor to the world. Now we have the GM section, how to run GM intrusions, adjudicating stuff, tying actions to stats, working with artifacts. There's a nice section here on building a story. All kinds of useful stuff in here. Building encounters, handling problem players, all sorts of useful things. Then we've got a nice example of play there. And how to capture the feel of the Ninth World, which is kind of post-apocalyptic, but also very odd. And then we've got adventures, Takers of Sorrow. I'm just going to flip real fast here, because I don't want to spoil anything. But you can see, this one book by itself is already super complete. You could definitely just jump right into a game with what's in here. This must be one of our giant poster maps. Ooh, there we go. Yep, way too big to show you, but you can see that it is big. It's actually a giant version of the map that is in the front of the book, on the end papers here, basically. So yeah, that's Discovery. Now we'll take a quick look at Destiny. Once again, beautiful, vibrant, colorful artwork on the front here. A little bit of a more blue-green, kind of aquamarine shade to it, which is pretty nice. We've got some kind of cybernetic person here. We've got maybe an AI machine. A guy with a cool respirator there. Some kind of steampunk lady over here. once again, a whole interesting mix of stuff. So here we have elegant rules for entirely new modes of play, robust salvaging and crafting rules, vehicles, artifacts, structures, and other Numenera to discover or build, new character types, descriptors, and foci, the Arcus, who adeptly leads, the Delve, who excels at exploration, and the Rite, who crafts installations, artifacts, vehicles, and weapons. Creatures, ciphers, and artifacts that build on the theme of Destiny, and 4 complete adventures, plus another poster map. Okay, so actually let's look at the map first. Wonder how this differs from the other. So we've got a nice poster image on one side, and then what do we got on the other? Oh, okay. So it's a city map. That's cool. So I guess we can delve deep into a particular location, which will be nice for, you know, getting players situated, starting off in the new campaign. So let's see what we got here. All right, we've got new characters, Destiny characters. We've got new character types, new descriptors, new foci. Then we got all the salvaging and crafting rules, more Numenera stuff, loads more setting info. Look at all that. More creatures and characters, and then we got rules for building communities. And I think that's really cool. Like there's a couple of supplements as well. I think one's called Building Tomorrow. For Numenera, that goes into the kind of building communities that give players a sense of place and kind of investment in the world. So, okay, we got new character types already. So this is the Arcus. Let's see. Archai are natural leaders of the Ninth World, using wit, rhetoric, and the strength of working together to overcome problems. Usually quite intelligent, but being able to survive physical challenges is important for anyone exploring or establishing new communities in the Ninth World. Many Archai have a high intellect and either might or speed as a high secondary stat. When forced to fight, Archai prefer ranged weapons. Cool. So we've got a kind of battle leadership archetype here. Yep, so they've got high intellect starting value for their pools. Of course, all the info about the advancements through the 6 tiers. Breathing life into followers. So I guess you can actually build up a following community that will stick with you and help you sort of establish yourself. That's cool. So the rites, they are builders and crafters. When something special is required, a rite can make it. So these are your crafters, artificers. They can build stuff. They can build buildings, vehicles, items, all that kind of good stuff. So I guess they're going to be the main focus for the crafting and salvaging rules, which are the next chapter of the book, I believe. Yeah, so they can do stuff like disabling machines. They can become adept builders. They get community awareness, insight into devices. So yeah, really focused on gear and building stuff, which is very cool. Then we have the Delves. What do? They are willing to risk everything. There we go. Just to find something new, something no one else has seen before. They're driven to expand the boundaries of the known, often rediscovering what was long forgotten. They delight in finding never explored ruins of the prior worlds and cataloging them from top to bottom. So they are explorers. So that's pretty cool. Very appropriate for the setting, indeed. So what kind of things do they get here? So they have a little bit less intellect than the Arcus. Their might and speed are level. They start with clothing, 1 weapon, light armor, or 1 extra unit of responsive synth. And a couple of ciphers, an oddity, and 3 coins. And then as they grow up, you can start creating traps. You gain a danger instinct. That's useful. You can adapt to different environments. You can foil danger and scorn harm. Very useful. So I guess these are abilities to kind of give them stamina, an ability to find and avoid damage. So they can sense danger and avoid it. They can sense traps and avoid them or disable them. It's very cool. Yeah, and then we have some examples of the different character types in the community. Now we have new descriptors. There's a whole bunch here. Adaptable, articulate, cheerful, civic, cultured, curious, gregarious, heroic, risk-taking, serene, vicious. Wow, there's a lot of new character options in this book. Very cool. So, yeah, loads of descriptors. Then we get into the foci. And again, quite a few. Absorbs energy, adjures the Leviathan, augments flesh with grass, defends the weak, fights with a horde, fuses mind and machine, moves like a cat, radiates vitality, sees beyond. Well, very cool. So yeah, I mean, if you think that the 3 types and the numerous, several dozen kind of foci and descriptors in the core book are not enough, you've got more than enough here to give you exponentially more options, which is great. Yeah, so if you have the descriptor builds tomorrow, then you gain various, or focus of building tomorrow rather. Then as you go up the tiers, you get to create and customize various things. So this again is tying into the theme of building your destiny in Numenera, building a community. That's very cool. There's a lot to dig into here. You know, I get the sense that the game sort of mechanics feel like low crunch. But once you get into the particulars here, there's quite a lot to sink your teeth into if you're into character customization, optimization, and, you know, trying to set a kind of trajectory for a campaign with your playing group. Yeah, loads of stuff here. More foci, sorry. Then we have the salvaging rules. So, I've heard these are a little bit complicated, so I'm not even going to try to explain these. But they have a flow chart to help you through how it works. So it seems like you need to salvage stuff, and then you get iotum, which is some kind of item crafty currency stuff, I guess. Yeah, and you have an iotum result table here. Iotum descriptors, so there's different kinds of iotum, I guess. Yeah, protomatter, mimetic gel, foam dust. Wow, I don't know what any of this is. Cool. I'm excited by stuff when I don't know what it is. Then we get into crafting. So I guess when you salvage some things, then you can start to build stuff. Automatons, vehicles, artifacts, installations, all kinds of stuff. Hopefully you have a write in your party to help you do that. Crafting skills as well will help. Then there's rules for crafting ciphers, artifacts, installations, vehicles, loads and loads of stuff. Commonplace objects and structures you might want to build. So residences, defensive structures like keeps, gatehouses, stone walls, granaries, mortuaries, shops, taverns. You can really build a whole city, it seems like. City hall, city watch. You can build weapons, armor, commonplace objects and tools, clothing, transport. So some basic vehicles there. And even home furnishings. Then we get a new section of all new Numenera. So we've got a big list of, this is the Cypher minimum crafting level table. Okay, so if you want to craft these Numenera, these are the level of crafting that you need to do it. Wow, okay, so there's quite a few plans. Wow, we're really getting into stuff I don't know anything about. Yeah, far-speaking pylons, keep safe capsules, hovering slabs. So here we're into Numenera plans. So I guess these are things you can use to build Numenera. Yeah, then we got ciphers, which are working the same as I mentioned in the core book. Kind of one-off cool stuff, gravity changers, iron wind resistance, iotum upgraders, transdimensional senses, travel bubbles. Then we have artifacts, which stick around for longer and can be part of your arsenal. Psychic Eradicator. Wow, that sounds serious. Psychic attacks that would inflict damage to the community during one community action are treated as one level lower. Okay. It's pretty cool that there's so much of this community focus on a lot of this stuff. I mean, it seems like you can take actions as a community, so not just as, you know, a group of solo adventures. It really will help you, I think, feel situated in the ninth world if the people that sort of accrete around you kind of have a say in what happens, you know. Wow, very cool imagery here. Some kind of giant millipede-like thing moving around. Right, so we have various communities you can visit. Oh, this is what the giant map is, and Thate. Cool. So that's loads of information about where to go shopping, what to do in this town. Well, that's a bit scary looking. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to explore here. I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you, but I'm definitely looking forward to this. I'll definitely start with the intro adventures in the first book, so that, you know, me and my players don't get totally lost in the lore. But I'd really love to dig into all these new character options. It might be cool to have those available from the beginning, even if they do involve crafting rules and stuff. Oh, now we have some more creatures, of course. The Anhedon at level 4. This horrible thing, the Balathor. The Barbarissa, what does he do? They're drawn to living creatures that have a bioelectric field. Every round, all prey with an immediate range of 2 or more Barbarissa automatically take 3 points of damage from the connecting lines of electricity leaping between each Barbarissa that remains alive and that can still move. Oh, so they create a network of electricity that zaps you. So they kind of, the bigger the pack, the more dangerous they're going to be. Then we have a level 8 Choanid, the size of a large hill. Sometimes they're mistaken for one. They're at least 9 meters in length, although some are larger. Wow. So yeah, when you get to higher levels, the creatures become pretty serious, and you have to be creative when you think about how to defeat them. Just whacking them with a sword or shooting with a laser is not necessarily going to do the job. Level 9 Dread Excavator. Ooh. When the distinctive silhouette of a Dread Excavator lurches over the horizon, it's time to evacuate. Almost nothing can prevent the inexorable advance of these vast wrecking machines. Health 80, damage inflicted 15 points. Ouch. And we've got Flesh Ghosts, Fossix, some kind of undead. Grief Steel, Idolum. Looks gross. What is that? They're often mistaken for humans because they steal the skin from their victims and wear it like clothing in order to learn information, insinuate themselves into communities, and find more victims for their friends. Wow, so they can infiltrate your community inside the skin of your friends. That sounds terrible. We've got Mech Shamblers. That's pretty cool. The Meepril, the Hunger in the Halls. Wow, loads of wild creatures in this game. Orgolian Envoy. Rabid Fabricators. God, loads of stuff. I'm wondering, there might even be more creatures in here than in the core book. There's quite a few. We've got some more. Oh, that's cute. Look at that thing. Double prehensile tails. Anyway, so we've got some NPCs as well. To fit the theme of the book, we've got crafters, chirurgeons, captains of the guard, spies, and rights. So these are NPCs that you would presumably want to have in your communities. And then GMing communities. So how to found one, community stats, community actions. Yeah, so really this the combo of these two books will really allow you to make an impact on the Ninth World, which is pretty cool. You know, some games you just feel like you're kind of murder hoboing around. You know, you'll affect a town for a bit and then move on. But really, Numenera is giving you the opportunity here to have roots and put them down, kind of stick around for a while, which I think is very cool. It definitely gives a different flavor. Okay, loads of GM tips here for running a Destiny campaign. And now we have 4 more adventures, which again I will flip through very quickly so as not to spoil anything. There we go. Yep. Random pages. More random pages. There we go. All right. So just an absolute load of content. Hopefully you kind of can get a little bit about how the system works. I tried to explain what I could just quickly and based on my still, you know, outsider knowledge. I haven't had the time, obviously, to dig into these yet because I just opened them right in front of you. But I'm really pleased with the look and feel of the books. They look great. The slipcase box is really nice. I like this medallion thing. I'm not going to pop it out of there. It looks cool where it is, I think. You know, we got these handy reference cards, a couple of bookmarks as well. One for each book, in fact. So, yeah, so the Discovery one gives you page references for character building, playing the game, so key rules, the artifacts and ciphers, and the glossary. And for Destiny, we have the new character stuff, salvaging crafting rules, Numenera and Cypher lists, and all the community rules as well. So it's really useful. And just like with the books, you know, they've really thought ahead as far as giving you, you know, loads of references on the sidebar of each page so that you know where to go. If you're not sure about a rule, they always give you cross-referencing. So it's really sort of player and GM friendly, the layout of the books, which I think is great. So anyway, that's this is my first dive into the Cypher system. I have also put myself in on the recent Kickstarter for the Old Gods of Appalachia, which is a horror game based on the Cypher system. It's based on a well-known podcast, which is kind of a Lovecraftian horror mixed with kind of folk legends of the Appalachian region in the United States. I'm really looking forward to that one. They've just collected my money, so that means everything's going into production now, and I think they're going to deliver or start delivering around July. So I'm really looking forward to that. My first horror game experience in the Cypher system. I've also put myself in for the recent backer kit campaign for the Cypher system, where there's a deluxe edition of the Cypher core rulebook, which I got, and a whole load of cool new physical books. So there's a Cypher system bestiary, a book of adventures, a starter set, all this kind of stuff for the general Cypher system. And I'm really looking forward to all that. Plus, there's 2 more genre books coming as well. So I've foolishly put myself down for all of that. So I'm pretty heavily investing in the Cypher system right now. But as that stuff comes in, as and when, I will, of course, let you guys know and put it on the video. I hope to give Numenera a shot in the not-too-distant future. I think it'll be really easy to teach to people, given the straightforwardness of the system, particularly if they don't have pre-existing conceptions from D&D. I think they'll be able to jump right in. If you've spent many years with D&D, just this idea of, modifying the difficulty and then doing the roll and all that kind of stuff is going to be a little bit weird. Spending your stats as pools and taking damage to your stats is going to be a little bit weird. But, I think my reading of the system so far and what I've heard from people when I've spoken to them about it and done my research about it is that it works really well for what it's trying to do, which is to have a relatively rules-light, but very kind of player-friendly system where there is a narrative focus, and yet there is tons of kind of character-building options as well. Things that you want to do in the game are codified by some kind of rules to kind of buttress them and give them a sensible framework. One problem with really rules-like games is that it can sometimes feel like a bit, you're asking the GM to just make stuff up all the time. Here, they give you a basic framework that makes making things up really easy. But then they have rules attached to them right away, and you can just dive in and keep playing without feeling like it's sort of arbitrary additions made to the game world. So I think that's really kind of hitting a sweet spot for me. So I'm really excited for this, in other words. I do also have a copy of The Strange from Monte Cook and Bruce Cordell coming soon, which is, again, based on the Cypher system, but it's totally different background, so I'll show that off when it gets here. I also have a copy of Vert, which is a third-party Cypher system game based on a kind of dreampunk, cyberpunk future based in Greater Manchester in the United Kingdom, which I think is pretty cool. And that game, the background, the licensed background that they use is actually really well suited to the idea of ciphers in the Cypher system. So I think it's a great match for that. I've also heard the book is just gorgeous. So very excited for both of those, The Strange and Vert. And as soon as they come in, I will try and put some videos together and show them off to you as well. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you're looking for a new gaming system that is really friendly for the GM, but gives players lots of cool stuff to do, then maybe the Cypher system is for you. And certainly Numenera is a very unique game setting. I find it really interesting and inspiring in a kind of far future stroke distant past sort of way, like something like a Gene Wolfe novel, where it's both we've both gone backwards in certain ways in society and gone way beyond where we are today in other ways. And I find that kind of setting really interesting. And I love the focus on exploration and discovery over just pure combat as well. So yeah, if you have any questions about the system, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments as always, but just give me a little bit of time, if I don't answer right away, because obviously I'll be trying to learn all this stuff. There's quite a few things, especially in Destiny, that I have no idea about yet, so there's a lot for me to learn. But as and when I pick things up, I'm happy to answer questions or give you any advice if you're thinking about getting into the game yourself. So on that note, hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. If you've got any suggestions on Numenera supplements or the Strange supplements or anything that would sort of enhance my gaming with the Cypher system, please do let me know. I'm always happy to take suggestions. Any hot tips, send them my way, please. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye-bye.